it's very difficult for me and perhaps other artists to look straight ahead at what one is being told to look straight ahead at. We're much more inclined to not want to do that for that very reason and look to the side.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Palette. I'm your host, Whitney Rosenson, owner of Art Dimensions, a fine art leasing and sales business in Los Angeles. If you're curious about contemporary art, how it gets made, and by whom, you're listening to the right podcast. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And I'm thrilled today because I'm chatting with Ben Gordon, an amazing artist on the Art Dimensions roster. Ben has a woodworking shop and he creates some of the coolest pieces around, consisting of old signage that he finds throughout Los Angeles. So let's dive in. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Whitney. How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome to the Art Dimensions podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. How did you start your career?
That's an interesting question. I think you mean in the art sense. I don't know that I can put my finger on that yet. I sort of almost feel like I'm still ready to launch there, even though I've had a little bit of success recently, and in the last couple years, I guess longer. It's been longer now, selling some art. I think it kind of started when I sort of took the pressure off myself to perhaps create a certain type of art, go with the flow, focus more on making something that gave me pleasure and creating something that was aesthetically pleasing that I thought somebody might put on their wall, more so than perhaps trying to say something about society or establish some definitive style. The genesis of the art that you were describing is from a material that I found in the garbage next to my woodwork shop. It came from a sign store. This material is created, if you can imagine, like an artist's work surface. Maybe you cut something out with an X-Acto knife, and you leave a mark on the table, and sort of artist table, collect all sorts of marks and flashes and things like that. This is essentially the same thing, but instead of for somebody using a knife, it's for a machine that's using a spinning blade to cut out large wooden signs and things for commercial uses, marketing purposes, promotional purposes. It cuts through these pieces of wood, these pieces of plastic or lucite and things like that. It leaves this mark, this channel on a piece underneath. These pieces underneath need to be continually replaced to not be too deteriorated in order to provide a good surface to cut through. So they would toss them in the trash. I would see them and I'd see all these words written in them and all sorts of lines, and couldn't quite yet make out what they were or what their purpose was. That was very intriguing to me, and I was just like, hey, those are really cool. I think I can just splash some paint on those. That's it. They're just going to look great. That's how I started, and I then eventually started to be more ambitious and to try and pull shapes out of these pieces that I'd find and put colors in strategic places to, tell a little bit more of a story, even though it's still an abstract piece.
Was that 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
It was perhaps just before I met my wife. So I would say it's about 12 or 13 years ago. And I think before that, I had expressed my creativity through some furniture musings. This was the beginning of things to be placed on the wall, but still very much influenced by, the fact that my day job, if you will, is interiors and custom woodwork for high-end homes in the South Bay of Los Angeles. I make things that I think would look good in those environments as well.
So you do the furniture creation, you do the painting creation, which is, they go hand in hand. What materials besides the signage, just briefly, tell me the materials that are incorporated into the paintings? You've got the signage on the top, and then you've got fiberboard. What is fiberboard? Can you explain what that is?
The fiberboard is this material, this discarded, reclaimed material. They come in sheets, 4x8 sheets of what I call fiberboard. It's commonly known as MDF, a very common type of material in woodworker construction that you might see at Home Depot. And it's thin, it's a 1/4 inch, but it still has these channels that have been cut into it, which are about, maybe a 1/4 of that depth or even less. They're very shallow channels. And so when I paint over it in one color, that color falls down to the bottom of the channel. And then I'll paint on it with another color. And that color will now cover the entire piece. But if I sand the surface and I sand off that second color, what I'm left with is the first color on the surface and the second color in the channels,
Very
and
cool.
creates this immediate relief contrast. Like I said, I like how it looks just with one color, and then I like how it looks with two colors, and then I've obviously continued on from then. But the genesis was that I was getting pleasure out of playing with these things, and it was rewarding. That would be the key to continuing it, I would imagine.
I hope, yes, that should be. And for the listeners out there, Ben's work is on the Art Dimensions website. You can check it out at artdimensionsonline.com. There's the artist tab in the upper right hand corner, and just click on that and find his name. His pieces are, for the most part, large, but there's also a few smaller ones too, but they're pretty big. What is the first creative project that you remember? And this could be a furniture project or something you did as a kid.
That would definitely be as a kid. I mean, I was always inclined, towards art and art classes, and even forts, if you will. So I guess probably a fort is the first creative thing that I remember building. You have freedom and all sorts of different resources, and you even choose to use resources that might not otherwise be conducive to fort building or what. You can do what you like until you get caught, and you can make something different every time. It's never the same. It's great fun. So I guess a fort would be my first creative project.
That's brilliant. What's your favorite part today of being an artist?
The enjoyment part, the sort of,
The
yeah,
freedom?
it's pleasurable for me at the moment. I feel somewhat churlish to say that because it can be that way because it's not my main source of income or anywhere close. I've been able to dovetail my woodworking career and creativity and now into sort of outright art. But what's been pleasure about the art is that I've been able to take the pressure off. If I do really well with my art career, that's great. And if I don't, that's normal. I mean, it's very normal for for people to not have great reactions to someone's art. It's difficult to support oneself as an artist. So, by not having to try and do that, I think
Takes the
it's
pressure
allowed me
off.
to, yeah, it's take the pressure off. And without the pressure, it's all pleasure. Creativity is greatly pleasurable for me, and messing around with colors and finding beauty and just in general objects, and especially in discarded objects, that's just fun. So without this sort of like need to make dates, which recently I did have to do for a commission, and it was stressful and it was difficult, and I think only for the pressure, was what kind of just sort of adds that element that makes it difficult. As an artist, I feel it's very difficult for me and perhaps other artists to look straight ahead at what one is being told to look straight ahead at. We're much more inclined to not want to do that for that very reason and look to the side. That even happens with art for me. If you have to do the art, you have to make it for a deadline or a certain way or something like this. All of a sudden, one actually wants to look away from art. That can be hard and painful. And so I haven't had to do that.
And you find a lot of enjoyment in it, which is
Yeah.
so nice. This commission, was it a large piece? Was it a small piece?
It was a large piece. It was 4 feet by 7 feet.
Wow.
Um,
What colors were in there?
it was a color scheme that I'd used before that I felt I was trying to recapture. It was orange and blue, and what comes across as a sort of navy, even though the layer of color is brown. I mean, in the end, the client loved it. All was well, but it just reminded me. It gave me reminded me the key ingredient to making art, at least for me, is to be relaxed, for it to be enjoyable.
That's awesome. So what inspires you to create, just in general? What inspires you? Is it your family? Is it your family and your heritage? What inspires you?
The inspirations, I mean, for the pieces of art at the moment, it starts with the material I was discussing. So it starts with this idea of finding intrigue and beauty in sort of discarded industrial items, or any other type of mess that we've sort of made as humans. I was very fond of, as a child, taking old machines apart, or going through construction site and looking at bits of machinery. Just I like that sensation of seeing something that obviously is important, is pretty old, is potentially dangerous. You just don't know what it's for, but it had great importance. That held intrigue for me. And this material that I found, the spoil boards, they held that same thing. And so it just made sense to me. I was like, well, that's great. I'm going to try and put that on the wall.
Do you go to construction sites presently to find the signage or?
No, the sign material I was getting from one specific, and it's not, the spoil boards. I was getting from one marketing company who did a lot of prototyping and sort of early marketing work, promotional material type things, very close to me in Culver City. And I mean, I collected probably 30, 40, 50 of these boards, many of which I still haven't used and have with me.
Oh, I'm
But
so excited to see what you're going to make of
yeah,
those.
but this is a material that they are likely still creating. Sometimes instead of discarding the boards, they will actually use the same blade to flatten out these lines so that they can continue using that material underneath, and so they don't make as many. So it has to be from a company that's cutting out fun things. Otherwise, you just get lots of straight lines.
Your work is really dynamic, and I just want to remind people it's obviously on the Art Dimensions website, but it's also, do you have an Instagram account? What's your
I
Instagram?
do have an Instagram account, and I desperately need to do better, but it's definitely on there. I'm not posting regularly, but it's definitely there for viewing. I have a website, benjamingordonart.com.
And the Instagram handle is.
The real Ben Go, Bengo, which is just a bit of phonic shenaniganery. But
That's
that's
perfect.
my name, Ben Gordon. So the real Ben Go.
Thank you. I'm so glad you shared that. I want people to check it out.
Yeah. There's
And
other stuff on there too. There's other art that is not consisting of the reclaimed material on there. It's
but
all
it's
art.
yours.
Yes,
Is
oh
it yours?
yes.
Okay, that's great. That's great. If you could collaborate with one other artist, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, lots of them. I kind of feel like I'm going to throw a name out of there, and it's just going to be who randomly started following me and I followed back on Instagram, or whom I started following just because I started following someone else. I don't know if I had to say anybody else's name, some other artist's name now, I would want to say Kehinde Wiley, just because I just think he's awesome. I just thought
Okay.
at a time when I was walking around galleries and just being underwhelmed, not just with what I saw, but with what people were striving for. Sometimes it feels like, I don't know, lots of artists are just looking for novelty. And as a kid, I was always caught up with technique. I always wanted to see somebody with great techniques, sort of oil masters and impressionists. I kind of feel like I didn't really like any artists anymore, and then I just happened to stop by a exhibit of his in Culver City. So it must have been a long time ago, 15 years ago, probably somewhere in between there. And I just
Okay.
saw his stuff and I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, style, great skill, social commentary. I mean, I was blown away by that. I was like, okay, this is something that, will actually stand the test of time. So even though I don't necessarily see any dovetailing between our styles creatively,
You have great respect.
I have great respect. I have great respect.
Awesome. And the artist, what's the artist last name again?
Oh, Kehinde Wiley.
Thank you. Has COVID affected your practice? We're in a pandemic, we're coming out of it, but I sort of feel inclined to ask this question because it's so pertinent to the world today.
I had a bit of a sort of art midlife crisis, maybe, or early life crisis or something. And yeah, I definitely felt opportunity with sort of the downtime or the sort of isolation that was being created by COVID. It wasn't just the virus, right? It was also a very politically charged time. And even though I'm kind of a centrist, I just felt like jumping in. And so I did I guess you call it an art project, which is completely, apart and aside from the abstract pieces that I was making. I drew all the king, queen, and jack for all the suits and developed a deck of cards based on present political figures
Right.
of the past regime. I had them printed in China, of course, and I have them, and I've put together a website to sell them. And it wasn't that I thought I was going to get rich doing it. In fact, in the end, I decided that I did not really, because I am a centrist and I don't think being divisive is particularly helpful. I didn't want to push these cards because they were, or at least would appear, one-sided, and so I decided not to push them hard, but I still went ahead and developed the cards, had them made, put together a site to sell them, put together a video to put on Instagram, which you can see there to market them, kind of as sort of like as part of the art. Art should tell you something about the time and the artist. So, what could be more apropos than an art project, which is just as much, trying to sell something as it is trying to make art. Because, to be honest, we want to make art. I feel like an artist wants to make art, but we need reward. You can't just have the need to monetize it.
Right.
It's just more a part of us than ever. One has to admit it. I was very pleased with this project. It suitably made, absolutely no money. I've sold a couple of the cards, but I greatly enjoyed it. It was a huge emotional and time effort during the fall, because I also wanted to make it ready to be sold for the holidays, right? Should be ready for the holidays, and I did. I got it all ready in time. But as I said, I just thought to myself, I don't actually believe being divisive is good, and so I don't really feel like pushing what I've made here, even though I'm very pleased with it. I think it's quite funny.
I think, well, I love the pack of I love the pack of cards. You gave me a pack. They're brilliant. And are those on bengordonart.com as well?
Those aren't on Ben Gordon Art, but they're on Instagram, at least the
Okay,
advertising.
fantastic. So these are all, like we've mentioned, so many avenues for you to check out Ben's work, which I hope you listeners will do, because his work is so dynamic, so fun, colorful, really, really special work. And the pieces really pop on a brick wall, on a white wall. They're great for lots of spaces. So we're going to wrap up, but I just want to ask you one last question. If you were granted $1 million for an art project, what would you do?
Now, I have to assume that also means I have to use it all on material, right?
No, you could use,
No.
no.
I'm allowed to pay myself with some of it.
Yeah, let's say a little bit of it. Yeah.
A little bit. Oh no, that was the point, right? So I can outsource labor, and I can buy materials. Yeah, and I would think I would try to set myself up. I would want to produce many pieces, to be honest. I don't really want to produce one thing, because then not that many people get to see it, or nobody gets to see it, right? It gets put in some vault or something. So I'd love to take that opportunity, maybe to make 100,000 or something really cool posters with a like fitting within my current style, and use that as the opportunity to make the leap that I want to make, which is going from lines that have been created randomly by this marketing company to lines that I purposely make myself, because I like the relief style. It's the
Great.
logical next step that I have not yet gotten to and look forward to.
Well, I look forward to helping you with that, if you are so
Thank
inclined.
you. You have been a great help already. I would want people to know, because encouragement
Thank you.
is far and few, but it's just sparse, when you're an artist, even though you try to tell yourself that you do not need somebody to tell you that they like it, because you're making something that sort of can't be judged that way. But I remember when I first met you, and you came to my shop and you told me that you liked my stuff, and I was like, God, I instantly love Whitney, and one needs that type of support. One needs, like, yes, somebody else sees what I see.
It's a
Just
good thing.
invaluable.
Yeah.
Watering it.
Ben, thank you so much. This was fun, really fun and inspiring. I really appreciate you talking with me and giving the listeners a glimpse into your creative world. So for everyone listening, be sure to check out Ben's work at artdimensionsonline.com, bengordonart.com, and The Real Bengo on Instagram. And my handle on Instagram is at Art Dimensions. There's a lot of information, but hopefully you will write down one of those and check those out. To all the listeners, wanted to let you know that Beyond the Palette is now switching to a bi-monthly production. So you can catch our podcasts every 2 weeks. I really want this podcast to be a long-lasting one. I feel like it's just much more sustainable for me to do this, to record every 2 weeks rather than every week. So I hope you've enjoyed listening, and I hope you will continue to enjoy listening. Episodes will air every other Wednesday. Thanks so much. Take care and happy creating.